sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for this land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 5:33. Our first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So is there anything that anyone has questions about or would like to change or add? Seeing none? Okay, so we will move on then down to adoption of the minutes. Now, does everybody have...
We need to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, right.
I'll move.
Okay, so approval of the agenda. Corey moved that. Thank you. Can we have someone to second him, please? Courtney, thank you. All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, so we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Does everyone have a copy of the minutes from last meeting? All right. Any questions about anything or anything anyone noticed? Seeing none. Okay, so we'll make a motion to adopt those. So could I have someone move that motion, please? Stephanie, thank you. Could I have someone second, please? Councillor McGuire, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, that motion is carried as well. We'll move on to disclosures of monetary interest. Is there anything to disclose from anyone? Seeing none, so we will move on. We don't have any delegations this evening. So our first priority issue is to look over the revised terms of reference and review those and get them approved. So on that note, will change things over. Stephanie has done tremendous work on them, and we thank her for that. And I'll let her have the floor and lead that discussion.
Okay, thank you. So what I tried to pull together was based on the original copy that I received, which was provided to me by Carrie Costello, which I think came out of the last meeting. And then it was a reflection of the comments, Lucy, that you had made in the document that you sent me afterwards. So I tried to incorporate everything in there. That has been created, that was compiled into this document, which Jenny is bringing up on the screen. And is basically getting back to what a reflection of what you had said, Lucy, you wanted to see. So I'm just apparently the photocopier. Well, I'm going to say it's probably user error as opposed to photocopier error. It doesn't collate, so I'm just collating for those who require a copy. But more specifically, I think Councillor McGuire, you had some questions or you wanted to bring up some additional talking points that, if you give me a moment, I can capture. Oh, I already have them. Never mind. So carry on. If Lucy says it's okay, go for it.
Yeah, carry on, Councillor.
Like, I can't get my computer to turn on. I don't know if it's a power or whatever, but
This place is haunted. It's getting to spooky season.
so unfortunately I don't. So I gave them a good read through, just kind of under the context. A couple of years, I think last year we gave a good read through the procedural bylaw and trying to catch some of the stuff that just duplication or standardized language in it. One thing I noticed with the membership is that in the membership section, we've got different areas where it says we need this many people for this or this many people for that, and kind of the criteria can overlap. And I know for getting this committee started this term of council, kind of the challenge was just the nuance behind that wording made it difficult to know if it made the bar, I think, higher than it needed to be to get the right number of members. I think according to the AODA, we want a majority of the members to be people living with disabilities. But the way the wording is right now is that that wouldn't include a member of council. So if a member of council was living with a disability and they wanted to be on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, they wouldn't count towards that majority, which I think is a mistake. I think that they would bring that perspective and we would want them to bring that perspective as a member of the committee. So, thanks a lot, Stephanie. So if we go to that, sorry, I'll just pull it up here if you give me a minute. So I would propose that we keep under committee structure. I'm not sure which page it's on the sheets there, but second page, maybe near the bottom.
Back of the proof.
So that first paragraph is as per section 29 of the AODA, a majority of the members of the AAC shall be persons with disabilities. Keep that for sure. Then for the second paragraph, I'd propose there's to be a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 7 voting members of the AAC. This will include a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2 members of council. I think 7's, we don't have a maximum right now, but 7's probably a good number of, like that's what the numbers would have been before with the at least this or at least that kind of thing, looking at a maximum. But anyway, we could make it as big as we want it to be. So then I propose with that, we could take out everything from there is to be a minimum of 5 members on the committee. We can take out the representation sections and we could take out that repeating paragraph at the bottom that just repeats the first paragraph, that there has to be a majority of persons with disabilities. And I think the advantage to that is just that if we, as long as we've got that majority, it doesn't always need to be a minimum 3 or a, you know what I mean? Like it gives us a little bit more flexibility depending on what that council rep looks like.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
In that line of thinking, under the chair and vice chair sections, I would propose that there's a line that says members of council and municipal staff sitting on the committee are not eligible to assume the position of chair or vice chair. But on the same kind of thinking that there could be a member of council that's living with a disability that would really want to champion this and be chair. Why not? Why rule that out? So maybe I would be okay taking out that line. I think a member of staff could not be chair because it has to be a voting member. So that would rule out anybody that's not on the committee. But then it's just up to the committee to choose from you never know, like sometimes you've got really strong committee members, but they don't want to be chair, and maybe the member of council's got that experience chairing a meeting. It seemed a little bit like not making it more restrictive than it needs to be, I guess, kind of thing. Then under responsibilities and obligations of members, there's a big paragraph there that's a lot of duplication from previous sections. So I'd suggest, just for the sake of making it clear and concise, taking out everything up until advisory committees shall conduct themselves in keeping with the policy set. I think that's the new information chunk for this section, but but that first part's just a lot of rehashing of the mandate and the vision and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Scrolling through, and I apologize for not getting these edits out to everybody in advance. It was kind of a last minute thing last night. But we've talked about this so much, I thought, okay, if we're going to talk about it again, let's get it to. Oh, and then for quorum, just to kind of clarify the language that a majority of voting members shall constitute a quorum, and add in only if the majority of these members are persons with disabilities, just to keep that, you know what I mean? You couldn't have you couldn't have a majority anyway, but it just really solidifies that language, I guess. And then I think that's pretty much it. Oh, reporting process. That's another one where there's a lot of repeating from the vision mandate, that kind of stuff. So I would suggest we take out everything just to the chair will report issues and recommendations to council for their consideration, and then add a second sentence that the chair may delegate this role to the vice chair or staff resources required. Because sometimes, I don't know, maybe it'd be better if it's easier for the staff resources doing a report on new parks facility that's being installed, then it's just going to be a section of that report. It saves, but if the chair really wants to come, the chair's always welcome and has that first right of refusal of it. So those were my kind of housekeeping edits to things that people were receptive or put it out there for discussion.
Yeah, for sure. I think I like your point about bumping that representation of people with disabilities up a bit, and just kind of finding that balance. I think that's a really good point, and perhaps we could, if everybody's in agreement, perhaps we could make that change. Everybody in agreement with that? Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And that wording is reflected in the document you sent me, correct?
Yeah, I did track changes on that,
Yeah, I
on
saw
top
that.
of your track changes. So
Okay.
assuming we're all good with the track changes from Stephanie's, they look good. So
So what I'll do is take the document, consolidate everything, and then I'll send it around and we can finalize it at the next meeting. Does that work? And then bring it back to council the following. I can figure out why you're giving my computer back, but now I know that's what it's done.
I can't figure out why I can't get this screen to turn on.
All right, so just to, before we close off, I noticed that, when I was doing these up the first time, I noticed a couple of spelling mistakes that I must have made. No big deal, but just something to point out. Under committee chair and vice chair, under that heading, the last word, or the last sentence on the page, if the vice chair becomes vacant and so on, but it is, the H and the A are reversed. Nothing big, and doesn't certainly take away from the content, but just something to watch. I think, thought I saw another one. Yep, under staff resources, minutes and agendas, there's some points there. In the first point, preparing and forwarding meeting materials, and I have omitted an E, so it's metting instead of meeting. So if we could change that. And then I just wanted to, Mayor Panko, I think you would be able to answer this, or Councillor McGuire would as well. Just in terms of a budget allocation, do we have a certain budget allocation for the committee, or?
I don't believe we do. And I guess do we believe there is a need for a budget?
Do we want it?
Aside from we staff resources are committed to us regardless, right?
Yeah.
If there's promotion we would want to do, or advertising, if there's things we want to do to try and help the community better understand. So I think there's probably some things we may want to consider.
Okay.
So I guess rather than putting the budget first, I think we should have a discussion, maybe next meeting, on what is our vision for the next year, and is there elements of that which would potentially have a budgetary impact? Because Director Clark, as the liaison for this committee, will be forming her budget probably in October, I would think, first draft. And so it'll be important that by the end of October that we articulate, do we have an expectation of some budget for this committee?
Okay. Okay. So we can, perhaps we can put it on the next agenda next month and just see where we're at with that?
I would suggest that. I think in the meantime, if everyone can get some thought into the vision as we move forward, and what are some things that may end up having a cost attached to it.
All right.
And I'm thinking maybe a public awareness campaign, right?
Yeah,
As one example.
Yeah. for sure. For sure. Any questions? Corey?
So last term of the accessibility committee, we did not get budget for the committee. And I think that was just based on the fact that we started late into the term. So yeah, I think it's fair that we discuss it this term.
I definitely think there's potential for a budget. I can think of some things we can use it for.
Good. Well, I'm not sure.
Okay, so we will table that and perhaps bring it forward at next meeting, and we can, and I do encourage people to think of some things that a budget would be good to have for. I think that wraps up our terms of reference. Does anyone else have any questions or comments they would like to bring forward? Jen, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, you're kind of behind the speaker over there.
A little bit, yeah. Okay, so I think that priority issue is wrapped up. And so we will move on. I'd like to make a quick amendment to the priority issues, and I just want to go around the horseshoe one more time and just perhaps say our names. I know we've got a couple of members that were on the previous committee and have joined us this evening, and we're very happy to have you and anxious to get to know you. So if we could start to my left.
I'm Heidi Trick. It's my first time on the committee. Looking forward to helping out and see how I can bring what my knowledge of having a recently disabled person at home, and looking forward to helping them and helping the community at the same time.
All right, and my name is Lucy Bingley, and I'm very honored to be chair of a wonderful committee such as this one, and really looking forward to continuing my work to promote participation for people with disabilities in whatever they can participate in, making that be able to happen. So we will continue to my right.
Debbie Small.
Go now. I am Courtney Priest. I previously served on the housing committee.
As the advisory committee.
The housing advisory committee, and I am excited to serve on the accessibility committee because I have a little boy who I would love to be able to play with on a playground someday in Smith Falls soon.
Might be the next agenda item.
Yeah.
Sean Panko, mayor, and proud to be part of this committee. I wasn't on it last term, but I was part of the council that I think had the vision that we need to have a committee. We were a smaller community. It's not a requirement because of the size of the community, but I think council agreed it's important that we try to ensure that barriers are reduced or eliminated, and we make sure this community is inclusive and works for everyone. And I think this group made the composition of the previous committee that were here today made a great strides last term, and I think we've got a great opportunity to make an incredible difference this term to make sure Smith Falls does work for everybody.
I'm Corey. I was on the previous term of the accessibility committee, and yeah, I'm looking forward to just continuing serving this term.
My name's Chris McGuire. I'm a member of council and happy to serve on the committee to listen. And I find out with a lot of stuff, we get so many projects coming through council and so many things that we're getting to vote on. But with the barriers, a lot of the times, if they're addressed really early in the planning process, it's really easy to eliminate them from the design. So I'm really looking forward to having the discussion from this committee and being able to be that liaison and bring those ideas back to the council table. So I really, this is it's a growing committee from last term. So thank you, everybody.
I'm Stephanie Cates, and this is my first term, and I'm hoping that I can bring a different angle for people with disabilities that not visible to others, and maybe put a different perspective on some things that might be beneficial.
I'm Jen Brown. I was on the committee last year, and I'm happy to be on the committee again this year. Unfortunately, with our Wednesday nights, I may not be able to make every meeting because I work at the library and we don't close till 7. But I'll be here as many Wednesdays as I can.
My name is Stephanie Clark. I'm the Director of Community Services, and I've been in that position since the end of March. And I am the staff resource, and I brought my resource, Jenny Davis, to help me with the technology this evening. So the fact that the TVs went off is probably my fault, actually. So anyway, I'm excited to be a part of this committee.
Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome aboard to our new members, and looking forward to working with our previous members and new members alike. So it'll be a great committee, I think. So I think, do we want to make a motion to approve those terms of reference then, or do we want to table that?
I'll bring it back to the next committee meeting, and then we can do one final scrub, and then I think we could approve then. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, so our next priority item is the Accessible Playgrounds Draft Plan Review. And
I couldn't figure out how to do it in color. I'm so sorry.
that's okay, and Director Clark is going to lead that discussion, so.
Okay, it's,
Director?
it's up there. Oh, that's okay. I've got one. Thanks, Jane. Okay, so what you see before you is a combination of a number of, it's draft. I should have put draft on it, but I don't think I did. It's a combination of a number of conversations that we've been having around the boardroom table at the department. It's also strategic priority number 6.2 that council has directed us with. So this year's council, or this term of council, has asked us to very clearly prioritize creating more accessible options. First of all, creating play structures that all kids can access. And so I think within that means we have to be more creative in terms of the actual pieces of infrastructure that we're putting into play. So strategic priority 6.2 is to, quote, develop an implementation plan incorporating inclusive playgrounds that welcome users of all abilities to learn, play, and grow together. And as I mentioned at the last Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, our first one, our understanding at the Department of Accessibility goes broader than simple physical barriers. It's also about those on the autism spectrum, those who are dealing with height issues, that sort of thing, differently abled in all sorts of, whatever that looks like for the individual. So we want to recognize that. And I think the industry has made great strides in developing multiple use, interest types of accessible features across the board. Currently, our play structures, the 2 new ones that we installed, they were designed previous to me coming in, but installed in my term so far. They meet the minimum requirements under the legislation. To me, that's a good point. That's a good step in the right direction. Certainly, it's better than nothing, but it's not good enough. So we've been having these conversations prior to the finalization of the strategic plan. So it works really well. I really like it when a council strategic plan priorities align with my strategic priorities, because it makes my job a lot more fun and a lot easier. And then it feels like it was my idea when really it was council's idea. But we believe that playgrounds are the quintessential play space for communities, and it's an opportunity for communities to grow together. We really believe in community space, and we believe that in order for it to truly be community space, all people need to feel like they can see themselves there, they have meaning, and they find belonging. And that means parents playing with their children, that means siblings playing with one another, that means strangers coming together and meeting and being inclusive in their play. So what you see before you is a very draft understanding of where we think we'd like to go. So our goal is to develop an implementation plan. This is sort of the zygote of the process, and I want some feedback in terms of where you're coming from and what you'd like to see. But I have a list on the left of a number of different parks and parkettes that exist or may not exist yet, but they will. In the second column is a potential target date. That belongs to council if we get the funding for it. That's my plug. And then a description of, in general, again, not specific. So Courtney, I did get your email. I responded to you. I don't know if you saw it. Courtney sent me a number of vendors who we would like to potentially pursue and what they have. But what we've got is just based on our experiences in other play structures, what we've seen, what we hear kids saying is cool, and what parents have, we've seen work successfully in other areas. So some of this is also I'm not sure this is the best way to phrase it, the lower hanging fruit. Some of this is easier to install in the immediate. So it's easier for us to install a piece of accessible infrastructure that's actually high impact and high use than it is to put a $750,000 play structure that is fully accessible for all people. So what we're trying to do is scale up, because we have a significant amount of work ahead of us in the next 5 years. In the next 10 years, but the next sort of 5 to 7 years. So the first one we'd like to tackle is Corbett Park. There's a lot of space there. That's sometimes called Highland, sometimes called Highland/Corbett, sometimes Highland-Corbett. It is where the second new play structure went in. There's a significant amount of green space that's around there, and we think that having been a bit of a recreation desert for some time, we think that community would benefit from having some accessible activities within it. The original thought was to put, they're technically not called merry-go-rounds anymore because I don't think those are allowed because I think they're too dangerous. And I've had a concussion or two as a result of those. But we'd like to put in a spinner. So the spinner itself is usually about $20,000 to $40,000. It's the structure underneath, it's the play bed, it's the matting and the material that's the significant cost. So in conversations with a colleague of mine who used to work in the Niagara region, they did 5 playgrounds and it cost just under $1 million to put the rubberized matting underneath it. They don't know how successful that will be after a number of Canadian winters. It's relatively new. So I'm a bit concerned about, because it hasn't really necessarily been tested, I don't want to put in $1 million worth of infrastructure only to have to rip it out in 2 to 3 years because it doesn't, hold up to Canadian winters. So we'd like to start a little bit smaller and make sure that we're putting the infrastructure in that's successful and that we see working in other communities. So what we'd like to do is add this spinner to the playground, put all the site works, the base prep and the rubberized matting and that sort of thing, and then add 2 additional sensory play items, potentially a sway swing, which is really good for kids who have sensory issues. It's, if you've seen it, usually it's like 2 flowers sticking out of the ground and it has like a really high swing that kind of goes across the chest. But it's not, you're not at risk of flipping over and hitting your neck like you would if you're sitting, how kids often, adults too, they swing incorrectly and then you face plant into the dirt. So you're not worried about doing that because it's built for playing and leaning against it. And then some sort of, we may have to talk to the neighbors, but musical instrument sort of installation. Kids love that. And ground level sort of interactive play structures. The idea, when you think about a playground, a lot of people think slides and monkey bars. It's actually, the industry has leveled up in terms of what they have on offer. So we have lots of opportunities for engagement. We've got lots of opportunities for imaginative play, water tables, sand play, all that kind of stuff. And so I think we just need to be creative in terms of what we're trying to do. So our first spot is to tackle is Corbett Park. It's been a bit of a, from what I understand, it's been not neglected, but it hasn't had investment in a significant way in some time. So we want to make sure that we're representing that neighborhood and participating in that neighborhood as well. Obviously, moving next would be Victoria Park. Very well utilized, very visible in downtown. We do have a phenomenal play structure there now. It's pretty busy down there. There's a lot going on. If you want to look at the plane, you can do so from the swing set. But it's not super accessible. I think it could be. So the focus would be in getting actual matting and the underlay that would allow people who have mobility issues to get to the play structure itself. And because there are some features that are accessible and they're at ground level for individuals with mobility issues. But we also want to do some site works around the physical structure. So from the sidewalk in, making sure that we have pathways that are accessible and entrances, exits from the upper and the lower part. We tried to get the swing set away from where it is now. We were not able to with the site space. So we did get that question, not directed to us, but definitely on Facebook. Why did you not put the swing set near? It's funny how that happens, eh? It was, why didn't we put it in that open space? Because we physically did not have enough space. And it would be awful if someone was swinging and happened to hit somebody as they were walking by. So we had no choice, but because of the physical constraints of the area, to put it back where it came from originally, which meant we have to now have 2 separate accessible entrances. So this is what we'd like to do. We'd also like to fully decommission the wading pool. It hasn't been working from what I understand for some time. The legislation around wading pools of that depth makes it pretty tricky in terms of the release of chlorinated water. You have to dechlorinate to get it into to drain it, and you have to drain it every night, and then you have to put it back in. And so it's not necessarily it might be a great thing in principle, but in action, it's a little bit more challenging to operate and isn't going to be as successful and will be fairly, I think, cost intensive at this point. So we'd like to decommission that and consider something else there. Victoria Park is going to be part of a broader revisioning at some point. Parks Canada is working on a park plan to see what they want to do in the big picture. We've been told 2025 is kind of when that's coming out. We're pushing for a little bit sooner. Just if we know anyone with influence in this room, perhaps pushing them to see if we can get that a little bit faster. But we do have some really great space and it is well used. We'll get to it later, but you'll also notice there's trails there that maybe need a little bit of help. So is it anyone, I keep calling it I've named it the Lee Avenue Parkette. I'm gonna be honest, is it actually on Lee Avenue? I think it's near Lee Avenue. Okay, that's good. It's I just made that up one day. So there is a blank space in our recreation canvas over on Lee Avenue, which is nice to know that I was right. There is a sort of an awkward shaped, pie-shaped sort of piece of lawn. So over the years, the neighbors have been very generous and cut it for a while, and then we took over cutting it because it's actually ours, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of the space that belongs to the town. And we started saying, so what is supposed to go there? And so typically when there's a new development, there's an opportunity for some recreational space. And because it's very small, we didn't know what to do. So instead of calling it a park, we're calling it a parkette. If you drive by, there's a couple of benches. We planted some trees. That's sort of phase 1. Phase 2, what we're visioning is a new playground structure that's focused on sensory and mobility play features for ages 2 to 12, because we think there's enough people in that area that will get that pretty good traffic over there. Some features that we really want to consider: full fencing around the structure, not around the parkette, because we don't think we need that, but around the structure itself, so that as a parent, you can have your kid just let her buck in there, do whatever you need to do, and make sure if they want to climb over the fence, then maybe you have a different conversation, but we make sure that they're enclosed so they're not going to be running onto the road. The proximity to the road is very concerning for me, so a fence would be required in my estimation. We're also looking at rubberized matting. Makes it easier if you have a fence to make sure that you're not lawn mowing over it when we're making sure the park is taken care of. So having those 2 pieces would make it infinitely easier for us to create a really accessible space. We're sort of envisioning sensory features, so play tables, musical instruments, noisemakers, things like that, like gentle swings, those kinds of things. There's tons of stuff that are out there, but also possibly, because spinners are fun, and they're also wheelchair accessible. So you can actually have full-size spinners where you have wheelchairs latched in. We'd have potentially some accessible swings, something like that. So that's at the forefront. That would be one of the primary goals, is to have mostly accessible features at that parkette. So we'd also have to look at, obviously, site works. It's It's only helpful if it's accessible the whole way from the road into it. We don't want to have a curb that's 2 feet high to try to ramp before we get there. So looking at pathways, crosswalks potentially in that area, that we'd have to have a bigger picture with a conversation with Public Works, but some significant site works would have to be done as well. Part of this exercise has been really good, I think, for the department to be more strategic in the visioning, but also to help recognize in this table as well. It's not just about putting a slide up or putting a set of swings in. We have to consider more broadly the whole picture. We have to consider access. We have to consider parking. We have to consider the implications down the road, literally down the road on the neighborhood as well. And so while we understand the calls for increasing accessibility, which is what we're working towards, we also have to consider a whole bunch of things. So it's a little bit more time consuming sometimes than it should be. To be fair, we also don't necessarily prioritize it as we should. So that's what this is supposed to do. So my really exciting one are the next ones. So if you move to the community center and then to Lower Reach. So in the recreational field, we talk about zones of recreation. And the idea is to create zones of recreation. And then you have walkable or bikeable or accessible, in some way, non-motorized accessible connections between them. The idea is that if you want to go and you want to play, you want to skateboard, or you want to go to the rink, or you want to go watch baseball, then you go to a zone, an area that's connected. I mean, and not a zone in the planning sense, but a zone in terms of it's all within close proximity. Most communities that are walkable, most communities that are connected, that have active transportation, have distinct zones of recreation throughout. And there's a priority, and it's deliberate around that. The community center is a phenomenal space. It's taken up by a lot of cars right now, many of whom park at the community center and walk across to the hospital, which they're not supposed to do, please and thanks. But we would like to create more activity for those who are participating in the arena. So right now, when you come to the arena, you can go to the track upstairs, or you can hang out and do whatever it is that you do in the front lobby. That's pretty much it. If you've got a brother or somebody that's in hockey, or a sister that's skating, then often there's not a lot else to do. We would like to create somewhere on that space a fully enclosed, large size play structure. We don't think there's a lot of play structures in that particular area. There's not a lot of activity where kids can just easily get to. And I think it would be really cool to have this awesome, like bright, big play structure. I really liked the example picture, and when Tana Tort, she was the community recreation coordinator, or community coordinator rather, she was doing this, she put the basic part of this together, and she said, just remind them that these are just example photos. This is not these are not artist renderings. I actually would love this to be the playground that we have, but that may not be the case because it's a fairly significant price tag. We do have some space in mind. We have to do some work to potentially get that space, but it would be an enclosed playground that features the accessible flooring, which also is shock absorbing. So that's another added bonus. It's a little bit easier to fall on a rubberized mat than a bunch of playground wood chips. And the playground wood chips, while cheaper, are not cheap. You can't just have regular wood chips. I feel like maybe you've seen someone fall on the playground wood chips. That, yeah,
A time or two.
it might have been. But everything has a cost, and because we have to have specific wood chips, we can't just go and take the trees that were felled in the storm in April, chip them and put them on the floor or on the ground of the play structure. Unfortunately, we have to buy specific quality, specific chemical-free wood chips and make sure that they're appropriate for the space. And so what we'd like to do is sort of do away with that and get the rubberized matting and make sure that fall protection is there as well, and it's also accessible. So we'd be looking at having accessible entrances, ground level play features, wheelchair swings, sensory play panels, visual board, calming stations, and potentially including a spray park or a splash pad of some sort. That would be sort of phase 2. And a potential to include or connect to a pump track. And so I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the pump track, but it's like California Games. I don't know. It's like a racetrack.
Like a racetrack for
bikes.
bikes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's they're pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie. So
I think.
yeah.
the library there?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And the cool thing is, I've been in conversation with some folks that they actually are looking at building accessible features within a pump track so that it would be open to a more broad range of kids, which would be pretty awesome, I think. So that's kind of exciting to me because we don't have a lot of activity up there of this nature, and I'd really like to, I think this would be an awesome thing to tackle. Like I said, I do have some space in mind. We have to make some we have to figure out if we can make it happen, but if we can, this would be something that I really want to work towards, and it would be sort of designed 2024, implemented 2025, and then down to Lower Reach. So Lower Reach is such an amazing space, but the potential of what it could be is endless. We have this incredible vista, this really amazing park. Terrible parking right now. It's just so bizarre. And nobody knows how to park there because why would you? It's not intuitive. But we have this really awesome opportunity to take this waste space, this literal landfill, and to create something beautiful that the community can connect around. And I think it's connected to the Heritage House Museum. We can start at the bottom of the community. You can make your way up through trails and so on to the rest of the community. There's such an opportunity for us to bring families together and bring the community together. We do that already, but we could do it better. My niece was on the play structure, the wooden one, the other day, and I thought I was on the play structure. And while I will admit that I don't think they're built for 41-year-old, 175-poundish women, I was a little bit spongy. So I thought we should probably do something about this very soon. So it's safe right now. It's still standing, but it's not good enough. It's old. It's tired, it should be retired, and it needs to come down in the very near future. And so that's something I'll also be talking to council about soon. But I'd like to scale the implementation. I want to do a full-scale redesign of what Lower Reach Park could be, and it should be. So that'll include everything from parking to event space to that weird trailer that's there that I have never seen used and is a little bit confusing to me, but apparently it's really cool when it is open and it's some sort of event space. No? Okay, Mayor Panko says. So I'm sure in the 70s when it was made, it was a really great trailer. So I'd love to do something where we have performing arts, we have opportunities for so many different types of cultural and recreational activities, because recreation is not just about soccer, it's not just about pickleball, it's about the broader picture of understanding of what recreation is and what it does to a community and for a community. So I think if we have this opportunity to revision what Lower Reach means, it could be this gem at the bottom. It holds up the bottom of our community and we could move forward, and it's a really welcoming space for everybody. So I'm really excited about that because I think we have the space to do something big. We have a nice big play structure up at the top of the community. We have a nice big play structure that's fully accessible at the bottom of the community. We've got, room to grow. It's going to be really fabulous if we can do that. So I have big dreams. But I'd also like to, similar to what's up at the community center, hopefully, we'd look at tot and adult swings. We'd look at fully accessible swings. We'd look at accessible spinners, or merry-go-rounds, that type of thing, sensory play, visual boards, calming stations, slides, all of those things. We'd have the whole gamut. And why not dream big? I think I'd also like to revitalize the splash pad. It's a bit tired. Apparently there was a piano there, so I see bits of it. So we want to revitalize that because the splash pad is really cool and everybody can use it. Everybody loves to, well, not everybody, but lots of people love to play in the water, and so why not? You don't need to learn how to swim if you want to go to a splash pad. You also don't have the same legislative requirements around a splash pad as you do a pool. So I figure we can, make it work. So I'd love to revitalize that because it is such an opportunity and it's a really cool space. And if we can just get people to be drawn to it and maybe expand it in a different way, then it would be really fantastic. And then the final thing is, which is also a separate strategic plan item, but is our trails. Our parks are connected by a trails network, and those that are not should be. We should be connecting parks and parkettes throughout the whole thing. We should be making sure that person who wants to go from point A to point B can get there, and that they don't have a vehicle, that's fine. If they don't have a bike, that's okay too. If they can't walk there, that's fine. We can get there in whatever way. So we need to look at developing some standards. And I think I wrote this here. Oh yeah, these are the last two. We need to look at developing trail standards. There are, and by developing, I mean maybe stealing or borrowing from other communities that have paid consultants lots of money to post it on the internet and have me take it and repurpose it for this community. they have clear design guidelines around what makes an accessible trail, what makes a multi-use trail, and what sort of surface the trail should be, so that it's long-lasting and is accessible for the most amount of people in the most amount of ways. And so I think that's a simple task that we can do. We don't have those standards yet internally for trails, and we certainly haven't utilized them across the community. So I'd like to start getting some regularized activity around that and being more specific with what we're doing when we're developing them. It's part of it is we need to make sure that our relationship with Parks Canada is very upfront and transparent, because we do sort of encroach on their land sometimes. And if that doesn't work, then we need to figure something else out. We need to be creative, because I think we can't have a trail that's like this and then the trail that's this and then through the mud. It doesn't work. We need to be consistent. And so one of the things that I'm also really love hiking, and I just like wandering, so I do that a lot. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to go for a wander through the whole community, that you have access to the trails that is accessible for more people. You also have wayfinding, signposting, information, those kinds of things that are accessible to a broader reach of the population. So that's my plan. Can I have the money? I will be more specific about what they ask. But between now and 2026, 2027, 2028, my department will be tasked with doing a significant amount of work. Whether or not this is all possible, we have yet to see. I mean, there's a lot of factors. I know that a lot of people had big dreams, and then a thing called COVID came along. So we don't know what the future will hold. But I do really believe that this is a priority. It's a priority from council. It's a priority for my department. It's a priority for me. And I think we have enough momentum and enough people who actually want to do this that we can start making some really good strides in the next 2 years in particular, but in the bigger picture, 2025, 26, 27, 28. And so eventually, with a little bit of time and a little bit of energy and possibly a little bit of luck and some advocacy from certain people, perhaps around this table, we can make this happen. So I would open for comments and questions and concerns if you would like that to happen.
Yes, sure. Is there anybody with a question, comment? Jen, we'll start with you.
Wondered, at the community center, I love the idea of having parks up there. There's literally nothing in that end of town. Did you say you were taking away parking in order to put that in?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we have to have parking.
Yeah, well,
there is lots of parking there.
Yeah.
But so we would like to reconfigure potentially. I'm loath to take something away because that parking lot is also very packed all the time. I think if it was used properly by the right people at the right space at the right time, it might be a little bit less packed. But we would be obviously we'd also have to adhere to planning and zoning issue or constrictions. But yeah, I'm not interested in taking parking spots away. It would be looking at expanding it potentially in some other way. Yeah.
Okay. That would just be a huge hard sell for
Oh yeah.
a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm not afraid of a hard sell, but I know when I
Yeah.
I know when I would be sunk for sure. Yeah.
Mayor Panko.
Yeah, Steph, it was exhausting.
I know.
No, for us watching,
Tell me
listening.
about it. Yeah.
No, your energy is contagious, and I'm really impressed with what you put together here. Honestly, you've taken a comprehensive look at the community and focused on all the needs and all the wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I love the phased approach. I'd love to see it move up quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when it comes to council, money is going to be a factor, but when you look at a cost, let's take a cost of what's $100,000. Let's say it's $200,000 for one of the projects, and the lifespan of these structures are probably
20-ish years.
20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we amortize that cost $10,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a big investment up front, but it pays back for a couple of decades. So as you mentioned, when we started the conversation, your presentation, it's part of the council's strategic plan. It's our objective to try and help create these community amenities and a quality of life here that is incomparable anywhere else. And it's not going to happen without an investment. I'd love to see it all tomorrow. I know that's not realistic, but I think you've got a tremendous vision. And from a staging standpoint, I think that's reasonable. I mean, when you look at how you prioritized, trying to finish up what we've started at Corbett makes a lot of sense. Victoria, we've had discussions, of course, on the waiting pool in the past and the barriers to having that function and the cost of having that function make it not a worthy investment. And I thought a splash pad might be fair there, but it's probably more appropriate to have it up at the other end. So we've got one at sort of each end of town. The Lee Avenue Parkette, we got a lot of kids in that neighborhood. The closest park is Victoria Park. It's not walking distance. It's not really appropriate. Not a lot of parking in Victoria Park either. So ideally, we want kids to be able to walk from their home to some fun, and especially in that area, the backyards are small with the homes. Further down with the townhomes, there are really no backyard. So having something in that neighborhood, I think, is critically important. I know it's not in here, but in the new Bellamy Farm subdivision, there's also a plan as that fills out of having another park area and play area within that as well.
And if I can just, I'm working on an RFP for a design for that, and the core function is multi-age. So 2 to 12 is typically the age of a play structure, but also like intergenerational. So when we're building new spaces, we want to look at like, how do I get grandparents and children and grandchildren in? So, you have to have benches for people like me who are tired of chasing kids, and also like maybe a picnic area or something like that. So we're looking at that would be incorporated in some of those, the new RFP for the design. In addition to that, anytime we do something like this, we'd be looking at the other sort of the auxiliary pieces as well, so that it's not just a play structure. We're trying to consider that sort of bigger age group and the intergenerational connections too.
Super. And then for parks and back to Lower Reach, books community center. We can go for every section here, but for the north end of town, it is a desert. There's really nothing there for kids unless you're on the ice pad, right, or playing basketball or hockey in the Jerry Low rink. So again, I support that vision. Lower Reach, incredible opportunities down there. We've got solved the parking issue down there, of course. That's just part of it. But from recreational entertainment space, we celebrate our festivals are at Lower Reach Park for the most part. And then trails, we've got, of course, the OVRT just north of town. We've got the Cataraqui Trail on the south end of our town. Having all these trails interconnected and accessible. We also have the swale, and it's so critically important that everyone has an opportunity to be in nature on a very frequent basis, and these are parts of our community where we don't always get to because it's not accessible, especially anybody with mobility limitations can't really get there at all. A boardwalk, of course, into the swale is something that we've long talked about, and the ability for people to get out there and enjoy that environment, that natural environment, is something I would love to see as well. And then little parkettes around, that's might be the last piece after everything else is accomplished. But again, just that convenience of having things close to home, or even within the downtown area where there's some space that's not utilized. So I know the only barrier today I see is money. And I think we're fortunate. We're a growing community. I was looking earlier today just for a different purpose, but I think our tax revenues have increased by about 50% in the last 7 or 8 years after being stagnant or declining for a long time. But doesn't mean it's all there for recreation. We've got infrastructure deficits, we've got roads we have to redo and sewers and water. I mean, in an ideal world, we could just continue, we would invest it in simply improving the community. Unfortunately, we have to deal with all the assets we have today and make sure they're rehabilitated and maintained as well. But I think there's, from a budgetary standpoint, it's having a plan. And what you have here is a phased approach and a plan. And it's simply a matter of council making that commitment. And again, when you look at amortizing the cost over the lifespan of the asset, it's much more easier to bite off.
Yeah.
So awesome job. Thank you.
And so Tana Torch did a lot of the prep work, and we've had a lot of conversations since I got here in March. And I think this is, I think we have the right team, and Jenny behind me. Thank you very much, Jenny. Everyone's really committed to this, and so the appetite is there from the department, and I'm really excited because I'm in my previous community, it was a fight to get an accessible swing, but the fact that everyone's like, yeah, let's do a whole playground. I'm like, this is amazing. So it's refreshing to come to a space where people actually want to support it. So I'm excited to work on it. So.
Just imagine the kids, right?
Yeah.
Who can't fully enjoy our community today, and then have that opportunity to be places that they can. So much fun and recreation.
Absolutely.
And I've got a granddaughter who's autistic, and I'm glad you built that in, because that's also incredible. The musical elements. I mean, I can see the challenge in trying to pull her away from that once she gets
Sorry
out.
about that. Yeah.
Is there anything, Corey?
So going off of one thing that Sean said, in the new subdivision, do you guys know where the park will be going? Is there like ideas for where it's going?
So at this point, what I have been told is that we do have a space, and it's been, I think it's pretty much confirmed, because so as part of the development permit process, or development process, they have to have a space set aside. And so we went back and forth, and I think there's a spot. Could I tell you where it is? Absolutely not. I could point it out on a map if somebody showed me the map and where to point. But I do know that it's quite a significant space, and it's larger than the original spot they were going to give us, and it makes way more sense. So it'll be a good one.
Well, Heidi has a question.
Great plan.
Thank you.
I do notice you're missing one of the parks
Yes.
in town.
Mm-hmm. Missing a couple, actually.
Well, a couple. Is there, and some of them are very tired as well.
Mhm.
Is there any implementation for those going forward as well?
So we are looking at, one of the ones that's missing is Alexandria Park, for example.
That's the one that I was thinking of. It was around the corner, which used to be utilized very much 20 years ago when my kids were young.
Yeah.
And I've noticed there's a lot more kids coming back into the area, and we have like one swing.
Yeah.
Like our play structure's gone.
Yeah.
The
Tired would be a really good way to phrase it. Yeah.
Like-
So there is, I kept that off the plan because we don't actually have a plan for it at this point. But we do know we need to do something about it. We're looking at some of the things that we need to know is and this will likely come through some community engagement down the road, but looking at how do we, what do young people want? What does the community want? What's the proximity to something else? Because we can't really get a big structure there, but if it's close enough to, or do we turn it into fields? What do we do? So as part of this is coming out of the being triggered by a revisioning of Lower Reach as well. So if we move fields off of Lower Reach, where do we put them in town? Because like I said, I'm loath to take something away without replacing it, a like or similar type of thing, maybe not in the same spot. We haven't forgotten about it. It is on the list, and we just need to figure out what we want to do with it.
Any other further, Courtney?
It's not really a question, but more so a comment. I think all of that is amazing and real, and I am excited to hopefully see it happen. Maybe not all at once, but slowly.
Yeah, it'll definitely happen.
It'll happen.
I would love to happen all at once too, but I mean, if I could just have 12 more staff, please. That'd be great.
No, but the work that you've put into this, it's amazing to see all the, like, it's not just, hey, let's get some accessible parks. Like, you've actually, it's good. I like it.
A plan is coming together.
Yes.
Yeah, and a plan predicates it's
something to
precipitates
actually
action.
see, and like it's not just, oh, we're gonna do this. Like, here, there's a plan. It's in the works.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. I like it.
Sweet.
I echo those sentiments, and thank you very much for your work, and this is looking really amazing. So
Right on.
looking forward to it.
Okay.
So I think if everybody's okay, we can wrap that discussion. I think everybody's fine with that. Okay, so we'll move on to accessible Halloween then. And some of the two previous members are going to know what Treat Accessibly entails, and I'll go into some explanation for those that need to learn. So Treat Accessibly is a Halloween initiative that started in 2017 all across Canada now, and it's started with an Ontario family who recognized need for change. I believe they lived somewhere in GTA, and they had a young lady on their street who was in a wheelchair, and she could never trick or treat. So it inspired them to make their house accessible. so that she could come and enjoy it like any other able-bodied child can. So there was 40,000 homes participating in this initiative at one point. And as of 2021, there was 100,000. So you can see the growth there. It's been absolutely amazing. And the goal is to have 400,000 homes across the country participating by 2025. I think we'll make it. We're well on our way. So what the initiative is it's based around having a lawn sign on your lawn that indicates that you will accommodate a child with a disability to trick or treat at your home. Whether that be, handing out treats from the driveway, from a different perspective to eliminating ghosts that jump out at you or anything that would be a problem for any child with sensory issues, autism, anything along those lines. Just really sharing that message that the happiest Halloween is one where every kid gets a treat. So, like I said, a table on the lawn, or being able to end, which brings up the point that, parents having these signs out, parents would know, oh, okay, my kid can come here because they're going to accommodate, my child with whatever disability they have. And I personally participated in this last year, and we did have a child come, and the mom came first, and the child was at the house next door, and she said, oh, come, this house is accessible, and having that ability for the parent to come and get the treat for the child, or gently bring the child over, or whatever needs to be accommodated for that child to do, to participate as fully as they can. So there is a website for this initiative. It's called treataccessibly.com, and I do encourage everybody to have a look at that. And something new that they have done this year is to have Halloween villages where they will set up a certain area. Excuse me for one moment. There we go. A certain area that they will have accessible in every way, and kids can come to a central location. And the closest one is in Stittsville to here. So I really encourage everybody to check out that website, and is that initiative something that we would think of doing? Would anyone like to do that? anyone know at this time if they would? Mayor Panko, yes?
Absolutely.
Yes?
And I just, on the website right away, and I see Remax
Yep.
Realty is involved
Yeah.
nationally. And so I don't know if we've had anyone speak to the local Remax office to see if they have signs available.
Yep.
I know you can register and get a sign.
Can.
From what I just read quickly.
You can.
Like-
And I kind of thought maybe Stephanie, you and I could maybe register and get an email when those signs are available.
Yeah, and I think the town can help promote it. I think we
Okay.
should start probably before the end of September.
Yeah.
Try and help create some awareness in the campaign and get the community involved in trying to, maybe not every homeowner is going to be able to be, or every home be able to be involved, but.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if there's a method of, as I said, do a map where people would know where to. do the-
Yeah.
A map similar to the Christmas light that you have, that would be something that would be pretty ideal and easy to access for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
Good
they're willing
point.
to opt in and then list the addresses.
I'm thinking we could do something even in town square.
I guess, yeah, maybe we organize it there and kids can all come there. And then once anyone wants to bring. Because the other factor you mentioned is some of the Halloween decorations can be quite terrifying for young kids. I know my granddaughter, we didn't get very far last year before she got scared
Yeah.
and had to return home.
Yeah.
So even if you had homes which little signs saying be aware, like kids with sensory challenges may not want to come up here. Or,
Mhm. Yeah.
so I think the town square idea is great.
Okay. Sorry,
One thing you said, Lucy, was like a centralized area for trick or treating where it's completely accessible and not overly scary. And it made me think about what was it 5 years? It was before COVID anyway, when it was pouring rain on Halloween, and we had it at the mall. Remember? And everybody just came to the mall, and it was great. And everybody got out of the rain, and nobody drowned, and everybody got to go trick or treating still.
Still drowned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shelter though.
But I loved it because parents brought our kids, and then some tables were running out of candy, and parents were running to the grocery store. I'll buy some boxes, and they're running to buy boxes and handing them out at the tables, and it was just a really great community initiative to have everything in one place.
Yeah. Good.
Dancing T-Rexes.
Yeah, so like, Corey.
One more thing. So we did this last term of council too, or not council, last term of the committee. The town actually had signs delivered to town hall, and then people could come here to purchase them. So I'm wondering if that's something we can maybe possibly get done again this year.
Yeah, I certainly, like I say, Stephanie and I can register for to be informed when those signs are available, and perhaps at our next meeting we can reconvene and get them distributed if we can get them by then. Everybody's in favor of that. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments?
Well, the other thing, a town square idea, maybe something that council could host just a Halloween party at the town square and because it's all accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And get some candy and make sure it's all ready, maybe decorated. I see Steffi's nodding too. She's got her costume picked out already.
This is awesome. Stuff for the budget.
We've got lights, orange and black lights.
Oh yay, there we go.
Joke. I love Halloween.
Yeah.
It's the best holiday ever.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can wrap up that discussion and table it and perhaps put it on the agenda for next meeting, and we can hammer out the details a little further. So our next priority issue is sidewalk accessibility on, I believe it's Ferreira Drive and Staple Boulevard, and Corey brought that issue forward, so I'll give him the floor.
All right. There's the sidewalk at the end of the area before you go on to Staples Boulevard is not accessible. There's a full lift up. So people with strollers that live in the area, or even with walkers that live in the area, they can't get up onto the sidewalk. So they're walking on the street beside the sidewalk until they get to someone's driveway to go up.
Sorry, which one's Staples?
Staples Boulevard is,
I'm just trying to look on Google Maps.
Or way to the new development.
yeah, it's part right into
Is that where all of the 3-story houses are?
Yes.
Goes into that
Oh,
area.
it's right by,
Behind Canadian Tire.
It's behind Canadian Tire, behind the trail.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there's no lip down, and then when you cross to Staples Boulevard, there's no lip down there to go up onto the sidewalk. So you're essentially walking from one driveway. If you don't notice until the end of the sidewalk, you're going back to the driveway, going down, and then up. And I know this isn't the only area in town, it's just one that I know of. But it's something that, when it's a new development like this one, something that they should probably be more cautious for doing.
There's no sidewalks.
Mayor Banks?
And then there's all.
Yeah, it's, we've had crews going around the summers grinding down sidewalks, you know, and doing some corners, especially strategic corners where there's a lot of traffic. But to my understanding, any new development has to have accessible sidewalks. So it's probably an error. And I think our public works staff can work with the developer to get that corrected.
Any others? Jen?
This is sort of in that line. In the older neighborhoods, there are a lot of inaccessible corners. I'm sure you
That's what I was
know.
gonna touch on next. I have a list right here of
Yeah.
streets and corners.
I was
that-
wondering if that would be helpful if when we're out walking and we get a list and like, would that be
If I-
helpful to have a list of them?
If I may, Madam Chair, I think, why don't we add that as a topic for the next meeting? In the
Absolutely.
meantime, if anybody, as you are written about, if you want to identify
Sure.
problem areas,
Yep.
Yeah.
as I said, I know we have had some of them ground down, some of them replaced. I don't know what the plan is to address them all, but it may help prioritize staff work in doing so.
It's all the older neighborhoods, right? Like, and like the curbs, right?
Yeah.
Right on the
Well,
corners.
all down Elmsley North and South and Chambers and Queen. Like I have to take that to take my son to the bus every morning, and every single morning I have to roll out into traffic, right down off my curb on Chambers, because it's like if I try and roll straight over it, I'm gonna face plant right out my
all
front
of
wheels.
Chambers
You don't
is
want that.
terrible.
It's horrible.
awful. Yeah.
It's awful. So there are definitely a few streets in the older areas of town that need to be touched up.
So what we can probably do is we can go ahead and maybe Steffi and I can have a conversation with the Director of Public Works and see what the plan is. What I think if it's a matter of trying to accommodate certain areas.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So we will put that on the agenda for next meeting then. And, further
If I may-
discuss.
Sorry, Stephanie, if you don't maybe make a note so we can connect with Director of Public Works and perhaps maybe even see if he can be here next meeting. To hear the feedback.
All right, so we'll wrap up that discussion. We will move on to correspondence items, of which there are none. There's also no in-camera issues. So I believe we're ready to adjourn. So could I have somebody move a motion to adjourn, please? Courtney?
Can I add something?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it possible for our next meeting for us, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this or not, but like the CIP plan, are we allowed to discuss like some of the ins and outs of that and like?
I think it's because there's an element within CIP for accessibility improvement. So certainly it's going to add that as an agenda item.
I definitely have some questions about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can put that on future agenda as well.
I think we can do a presentation on it so that one, the committee is aware, can provide any feedback, and two, hopefully the public picks up on it as well. Because I don't think we've had a lot of applications yet.
That was gonna be.
Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think that's a really good point, especially when we look at our terms of reference. It says, let's get a strategic plan, let's get these lined up. So maybe if at the next meeting we wanted to do like accessible businesses is a huge one, right? Like a brainstorming on that, and then the sidewalks and that kind of accessibility is a big one. If we could think of maybe some of those big topics, the parks was a big one we covered tonight, and then start to get that into our plan, then we can, you know what I mean? We'll have that kind of year by year where we can go, but
For sure.
definitely, yeah, CIP. It's been a long time since we've had an accessibility grant, so.
That's what I was, just to make one quick comment, because I went downtown last week with my son, and he goes into Sweet Scoops all the time, but I can't get in, so I have to stay outside, and he kind of goes in and orders by himself. But there is a business downtown, and it's the Cozy Cottage gift shop.
Oh,
They
yeah.
took it upon themselves to make it accessible. Now, you have a business like Pizza Pizza. It's a huge franchise. There's 750 Pizza Pizzas in Canada. This Pizza Pizza has been in Smiths Falls for how long? Smiths Falls has kept it going, and there's never been a ramp.
I can't get in there
the past
either.
11 years, I haven't been able to go into Pizza Pizza. I can't get a walk-in special pickup piece of pizza. But the Cozy Cottage, which is a little personally owned business, they've made their shop accessible to the citizens of Smiths Falls. And I think that we need to get the CIP out there so more businesses know down on Main Strip that, you know,
Yeah.
their businesses can get help becoming accessible, because I'd love to go in and get ice cream with my son. You know? That's my piece.
Mayor Peng?
If I make one final comment or question, Smiths Falls for All Committee has been formed recently. We meet tomorrow morning for the first time, and that's really, it's lack of a better expression, diversity, inclusion, equity in our community. And I think it'd be great if there's any member of this committee who have an interest in serving on that committee, because I think the efforts there are a lot of bilateral considerations here, and we're trying to develop a community that does work for everybody. The accessibility features are very important. So just throwing it out there, if you're interested, you'll be there for the first meeting, but get back to me, or you can submit an application as you did for this committee, and be there for the next meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else? No. Okay, so I think we can adjourn. So can I have somebody make a motion to adjourn, please? Courtney, thank you. And could I have a seconder, please? Ken, thank you. And so we will wrap up, and we will see you next month. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This is a improvement over Zoom. Yes.
And we've got 2 or 3 new, like more,
I have a concert
more people.
It's kind of funny.
Chairs are not acceptable.
I'm so tired tomorrow.
I'm not gonna sleep at all.
You only need 2 more.
I don't, because Iggy's
I think-
dead. I think he's actually dead.